My name is Alyssa Ward, and at 34 years old, I built an $8 million tech company from nothing but grit, caffeine, and sleepless nights. I poured my entire life into that business, sacrificed relationships, peace of mind, and every ounce of energy I had, just to give my family a sense of security they had never known. They were supposed to be proud of me. Instead, during what should have been a celebration, they betrayed me in a way that left scars I still feel today. That night began like any other family dinner, expensive, formal, and emotionally suffocating. We were gathered at Levin's, a waterfront restaurant overlooking the glowing skyline of Seattle. My father, Raymond, sat across from me, his posture stiff and proud as always. My mother, Clara, smiled that polite, performative smile she wore like armor. And then there was my younger sister, Sophia, the family's darling and perpetual damsel, sitting beside them like a porcelain doll pretending to belong. We had just finished dessert when my father cleared his throat and said, "We've made a decision about the company shares." He didn't look at me. He looked at Sophia. I frowned, unsure where this was heading. "What decision?" He slid a folded paper across the table, the kind that smells faintly of ink and betrayal. "We've transferred our shares to Sophia. She needs them more than you." The words hit like ice water. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. He met my gaze finally, his tone matter-of-fact. "Our 10%, plus the 3% Sophia already had. She's a single mother with real responsibilities. You don't have anyone to take care of. You can always make more money. She can't." That smirk. That smug, dismissive smirk I'd seen my entire life whenever he wanted to remind me who held the power. My hands trembled under the table, but I didn't let it show. Sophia's voice broke the silence, airy and detached. "It's only fair, Alyssa. You've always had it easier. You're talented. Things just happen for you." She didn't even look ashamed. She never did. My mother reached out as if to comfort me, her tone syrupy. "Sweetheart, don't take it personally. Your sister's been through so much. You'll understand one day." I leaned back slowly, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. My own family had just robbed me in plain sight, in the middle of a restaurant I had paid for, during a dinner I had organized to celebrate them. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Is that so?" They didn't notice the tone, the shift in my eyes. But that night, I decided something quietly, almost peacefully. If they thought they could take what I built and hand it to someone who'd never lifted a finger for it, they were about to learn who they were dealing with. To understand how I got there, you need to know where it started. I grew up in a damp corner of Seattle, in a house that constantly smelled of burnt coffee and resentment. My father cycled through business ideas like they were lottery tickets, imported antiques one month, specialty sauces the next. None of them lasted. My mother hoarded coupons like they were life rafts. And through all of it, Sophia was the sun around which they orbited. She was 3 years younger, spoiled since birth, and mastered the art of victimhood before she could tie her shoes. Her tears could turn my father's fury into sympathy within seconds. Her failures were always someone else's fault. I was the opposite, independent, focused. I learned early that if I wanted anything, school supplies, clothes, respect, I had to earn it. By high school, while Sophia was busy perfecting her cheerleader wave and chasing attention, I was running a small jewelry business, selling handmade bracelets to classmates and teachers. I saved every dime. When I showed my father the $2,800 I'd saved, he didn't even glance at it. "That's cute," he said. "But it's time to start thinking about a real career." That real career became my escape route. I earned a scholarship to the University of Washington, majoring in computer science. My parents barely noticed. "Computer what?" my mother asked. "Why not law like your cousin Mia? She already has an office downtown." Meanwhile, Sophia dropped out of community college after one semester, claiming the professors didn't appreciate her creativity. My parents comforted her with a new car and spa membership. I didn't fight for their attention anymore. I poured myself into code. The logic of it made sense. Unlike people, code was predictable. It rewarded effort, not drama. After graduation, I landed a job at DataSyn, a struggling tech firm. The pay was barely enough to survive, but I learned everything I could. I watched leaders make one poor decision after another, overspending, ignoring feedback, missing opportunities right in front of them. That's when I spotted a gap in the market. Small to medium-sized businesses were drowning in data but couldn't afford the massive software systems built for corporations. That gap became an idea, and that idea became Flowgrid, the company I would eventually build from nothing. When I first told my family about it, I might as well have told them I planned to fly to Mars. Another tech thing? My father scoffed. Those Silicon Valley dreamers all crash eventually? My mother wrinkled her nose. Who would even use that? Sophia yawned. Anyway, I'm thinking of starting a fashion blog. Can I borrow $600 for a camera? That was their faith in me, dismissive laughter and handouts for my sister. But I kept building. Nights, weekends, holidays, it didn't matter. My tiny apartment became a war zone of whiteboards, cables, and coffee cups. I lived off instant noodles and determination. When I finally launched the first prototype, I had balon $200 left in my bank account. Investors ignored me, 27 rejections to be exact. They said I was too young, too inexperienced, too ambitious, but I kept showing up, and eventually someone saw me. Her name was Diane Parker, an angel investor with sharp instincts and a sharper mind. She had built and sold 2 tech startups and knew exactly what kind of grit it took. After 4 meetings and dozens of revisions to my pitch, she invested $120,000 for 10% equity. It wasn't much, but it was oxygen to a drowning dream. When I told my family about my first investor, they reacted exactly as expected. My father shrugged. Investors throw money at anything these days. Don't get too excited. My mother frowned. You sure she's not taking advantage of you? Sophia smirked. Must be nice to just have people hand you cash. Their words stung, but I'd learned something over the years. I didn't need their belief to succeed. I only needed their doubt to keep going. With Diane's investment, I rented a shoebox office, hired my first employee, and began building the company that would change everything. What I didn't know back then, what I couldn't possibly imagine, was that the people I was fighting so hard to make proud would one day become the very people I'd have to fight against. And when they did, I wouldn't just defend what was mine. I would take everything they thought they could steal. The first year of building Flowgrid nearly broke me. I slept 4 hours a night, lived on black coffee and protein bars, and barely saw daylight. But every crash of exhaustion was met with a spark of purpose. My dream wasn't just to build software. It was to build freedom, freedom from struggle. Freedom from the quiet humiliation of being the daughter who never measured up. I started small, offering affordable automation tools to local businesses drowning in spreadsheets. Then a healthcare client took a chance on me. We built them a custom data integration system that worked flawlessly. Their success story went viral in a trade magazine, and within weeks I had 3 new clients. That was the moment Flowgrid stopped being a dream and became a movement. I expanded carefully, hiring 2 employees, renting a better office space downtown, and taking exactly nothing for myself. My wardrobe was 2 pairs of jeans and 1 blazer. Every dollar went back into the company. By the end of year 2, we'd crossed $750,000 in revenue. For the first time in my life, I didn't just have stability. I had power. So what did I do? I used it to help my family. When my parents' furnace broke in the middle of winter, I replaced it. When Sophia's second marriage fell apart and she was left with 2 kids, no income, and plenty of drama, I paid her rent and covered her tuition for a new certificate program. When my parents' old car finally gave up, I surprised them with a new one. Each gesture was met with the same shallow gratitude. You didn't need to do that, my father would say, pretending pride was the reason he couldn't say thank you. My mother would fuss about my hair, my clothes, or how lonely I must be, as though success was something to pity. Sophia always promised to pay me back. She never did, but I kept giving. Because deep down, I wanted them to finally see me. And for a brief moment, I thought maybe they did. By year 4, Flowgrid hit $2 million in annual revenue. We'd expanded to 3 cities, and the press started to notice. Tech blogs called me a rising voice in automation. Forbes ran a short feature on women innovators to watch. I printed that article and brought it to my parents' house, thinking it might finally matter to them. My father looked at it once, then said, "They'll write about anyone these days." My mother pointed to the photo and asked, "Couldn't you have worn something with more color?" But my niece and nephew, Sophia's kids, had a different reaction. They ran around the living room waving the article, shouting, "Aunt Alyssa's famous." Their laughter, innocent and pure, filled the room like sunlight through storm clouds. For the first time, I felt real pride. So I doubled down. When Flowgrid reached a valuation of $5 million, I made what I thought was a generous, even noble decision. I restructured ownership and gave my parents and Sophia a small piece of the company. My parents each received 5% and Sophia got 3%. I explained it carefully, wanting them to understand the meaning. "These are shares," I said. "You'll receive dividends as the company grows. It's financial security for life." They nodded politely, though I could tell none of them truly grasped the value. To them, it was just paper. To me, it was proof. I was sharing the fruits of my success with the family who'd once doubted I could even survive. I invited Sophia to shadow me at work for a few weeks, hoping she might grow curious about how it all worked. She lasted 10 days before complaining that coding gives her headaches. I didn't mind. I told myself, at least I tried. When Flowgrid hit $8 million in valuation, I decided to host a family celebration dinner. I wanted to thank them, to show them what we'd achieved together. I booked a private room at Canessa, an elegant restaurant perched above Lake Union with panoramic views of the Seattle skyline. I paid for everything: the wine, the car service, the private chef. I even bought a new dress, something elegant and understated. For once, I wanted to look the part of the successful woman they'd never believed I could become. When they arrived, everything seemed perfect. My father wore the suit I'd given him the previous Christmas. My mother glowed in a navy blue gown. Even Sophia had made an effort, leaving her children with a sitter and showing up on time. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel hopeful. The conversation was polite at first, even pleasant. My mother complimented the food. My father made small talk about the stock market, pretending to understand tech. Sophia scrolled through her phone occasionally but smiled when I mentioned her kids. As dessert was served, creme brulee with espresso, I stood and raised my glass. "To family," I said warmly, "and to everything we've accomplished together." They clinked glasses, but something was off. I noticed the way my father exchanged glances with my mother, the faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Sophia avoided my eyes entirely. Still, I pressed on. "I wanted to share some good news tonight," I said. "Flowgrid just hit an $8 million valuation. The shares I gave you last year have more than doubled in value. We're expecting $12 million by next quarter." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then my father leaned back, eyes cold and calculating. "That's actually good timing," he said. "We have some news too." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. He slid it across the table toward me. "We've made some changes to the company's ownership." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He nodded toward Sophia. "We've transferred our shares to your sister, all of them. She needs the support more than you." It took a second for the words to land. 13%. Together, they'd transferred 13% of Flowgrid, worth nearly $1 million, to my sister. I blinked, trying to process. What? You can't just..." My father cut me off. "You can make more money, Alyssa." "She can't. She has children to think about. You don't even have a dog." I stared at him, speechless. My mother touched my hand as if soothing a child. "It's only fair, sweetheart. You're strong. You'll be fine." Then Sophia finally spoke, twirling her wine glass like a queen addressing her servant. "It's not a big deal, Alyssa. You'll make it back in no time." I looked at her, the woman who had never held a job for more than 6 months, who'd borrowed money from me a dozen times and never repaid a cent, and realized I was sitting across from strangers wearing my family's faces. My chest tightened, but my voice came out steady. "Is that so?" They mistook calm for surrender. My father smiled, pleased with himself. My mother sighed with relief. Sophia leaned back, smug and satisfied. They thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. That night, I went home, sat in the dark of my office, and opened my laptop. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage sharpened into precision. If they wanted to take from me, they would learn the cost of betrayal. And when I was finished, they wouldn't just lose the money, they'd lose everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by my desk with the Seattle skyline glittering through the window like 1,000 false promises, and I replayed their words over and over. "You can always make more money. She needs it more. You'll be fine." It wasn't just greed. It was contempt. a message loud and clear. My worth existed only in what I could give them. They thought I would sulk, lick my wounds, and move on. But what they didn't understand was that I built FlowGrid from nothing. I'd faced rejections, debt, and exhaustion so deep it nearly broke me, and I survived. I wasn't some fragile heiress who'd crumble at a family betrayal. I was a woman who knew how to rebuild an empire from ashes, and this time, the ashes would be theirs. The next morning, I called Diane Parker, my first investor and silent mentor. I told her everything, from the dinner to the transfer of shares. She listened quietly, her tone calm but edged with fire. "They gave away your shares?" she said, incredulous. "Not mine, theirs," I clarified. "But the problem is, now they think they own part of my future, and I can't have that." Diane paused for a moment, then said, "Then we take it back, quietly, legally, and in a way that makes them wish they never crossed you." She connected me with a corporate attorney who specialized in internal shareholder disputes. After 2 weeks of strategy meetings and paperwork, we had a plan, one that didn't just remove their ownership, but exposed the rot they'd tried to plant inside my company. The first step? A restructuring clause Diane had suggested years ago, but I'd never used until now. It allowed the company's board, which I controlled, to repurchase minority shares from holders found to be in breach of fiduciary responsibility or damaging to company reputation. So, I began to dig. I discovered that Sophia, in her usual brilliance, had been bragging about her shares in FlowGrid to her ex-husband, the one who owed her alimony. She had used her new wealth to secure a line of credit by listing FlowGrid equity as collateral. Legally, that was enough. Within 3 weeks, my lawyer drafted the termination documents. I scheduled an emergency board meeting, invoked the clause, and executed a forced buyback of Sophia's shares, at fair market value as of the date of her breach, which was 2 months prior, before our valuation jumped another $2 million. She was furious when she received the notice, but she couldn't fight it. Every email, every document, every social post she'd made was clear evidence. Her 13% stake? Gone. But that wasn't the end. No, that was just the prelude. My family didn't know it yet, but the next phase of my plan was already in motion. I had been approached months earlier by a major tech conglomerate interested in acquiring FlowGrid. I had turned them down then, but now it was the perfect move. I reopened negotiations on one condition: the buyout had to happen quietly and close fast. Diane and I worked through the details in secret. 3 months later, FlowGrid was sold for $18.4 million. After taxes and payouts, my personal earnings stood at $9.7 million. When the sale went public, my phone lit up like fireworks. Journalists wanted interviews, old colleagues sent congratulations, and of course, my family came calling. My father was the first to leave a message. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. What a huge moment for the family." My mother followed. "Alyssa, darling, your father and I were thinking we should plan a family dinner to celebrate. You know, to talk about your next move." And finally, Sophia's message, short and dripping with false affection. "Hey sis, guess that means my shares are worth more now, right? We should talk about dividends." I played that message twice, just to feel the satisfaction before deleting it. Then I sent out an email. To Raymond Ward, Clara Ward, Sophia Ward. Subject: regarding FlowGrid. Dear family, I hope this email finds you well. You might have heard the news. FlowGrid has been acquired by Apex Data Systems. It's an exciting new chapter, and I'm proud of what we achieved. That said, as of 3 months ago, none of you hold any shares or financial interest in the company. Due to legal and fiduciary breaches, your ownership was rescinded prior to the sale. The official documents were sent to your registered addresses. Perhaps you should check your mail. I wish you all the best. Alyssa. I hit send and sat back. My phone rang 20 minutes later. My father, then my mother, then Sophia. I didn't answer any of them. For once, they'd have to live with silence. The following week, headlines exploded. Tech visionary Alyssa Ward sells FlowGrid for $18 million. Self-made CEO's emotional journey from family rejection to industry icon. My story went viral. But what the world didn't know was that behind every headline, behind every congratulatory comment, there was a quiet victory, not just in dollars, but in dignity. For years, I had begged for their approval. Now, they couldn't even reach me. A few weeks later, I visited the old house, not to reconcile but to remember. It looked smaller than I remembered, the yard unkempt, the paint fading. My mother answered the door, her expression a mixture of surprise and guilt. "Alyssa," she breathed, as though seeing a ghost. "You look different." "I should," I said simply. I finally stopped. My father appeared behind her, silent, his eyes darting between us. "We heard about the sale," he said finally. "You did well." "I did," I replied. "Without you." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Maybe for the first time, he realized what I'd become. Not the obedient daughter, not the desperate child craving their approval, but a woman who had taken every ounce of their doubt and turned it into gold. I turned to leave, but then paused at the doorway. "Do you know what the irony is?" I asked softly. "You thought taking from me would make you richer. But the moment you did, you lost the only thing worth having. My loyalty." My mother's voice cracked. "Alyssa, please. We didn't mean—" I shook my head. "You did. You just didn't think I'd do something about it." And with that, I left. 6 months later, I stood on a stage in San Francisco, speaking at a Women in Tech conference. The lights were bright, the audience vast. I told them my story, the failures, the sleepless nights, and yes, the betrayal. "Success isn't measured by who claps for you," I said, my voice steady. "It's measured by who you become when no one does." The crowd erupted in applause, but my eyes were on one woman in the front row, Diane, smiling proudly. When I stepped off stage, she hugged me and whispered, "You didn't just win, Alyssa. You rewrote the story." I smiled. "No," I said quietly. "I just wrote my own ending." Now, when I look back at that night in Canessa, the dinner, the smug smiles, the paper that started it all, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel gratitude. I didn't sleep that night. Seattle was wrapped in its usual midnight drizzle, the kind that clings to the glass and hums against the city lights. But my mind was wide awake, cold, sharp, and alive. Every word from that dinner echoed in my head like a haunting refrain. You can always make more money. She needs it more than you. You'll be fine. For most people, betrayal feels like heartbreak. For me, it felt like electricity, the spark that ignites the kind of focus no success ever could. They thought I'd be crushed. They thought I'd swallow the humiliation and keep paying their bills like nothing had changed. But I built FlowGrid from the ground up. I didn't crumble when venture capitalists rejected me, when friends gave up on me, when my savings dropped to zero. Why would I crumble now? No, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of my revenge arc. The blueprint for revenge. At sunrise, I was already on the phone with Diane Parker, my investor, mentor, and, at that moment, the only person I trusted. I told her everything. The dinner, the transfer, the smirk on my father's face. Diane listened silently until I finished. Then she said one line that rewired my entire brain. "Never get angry, Alyssa. Get even, and get paid doing it." That became my mission statement. We met at her downtown office 2 days later. Diane was elegant as always, with her sharp bob and calm authority. She spread a folder across the table, legal documents, strategy notes, and a contact card for her corporate attorney, Renee Dalton, a woman known in Seattle as the Shark Who Smiles. Renee didn't waste time. "If your family transferred their shares under your private company agreement, you have leverage," she explained. "Every shareholder has a fiduciary duty not to act against the company's interests. If they did anything that could harm FlowGrid, we can force a buyback." "Define harm," I asked. Renee smiled thinly. "Anything that damages reputation, trust, or business integrity." From what Diane told me, your sister's track record alone might qualify. We started digging. The smoking gun. It didn't take long to find it. Sophia had been parading her newfound wealth around social media. There were posts about her tech company shares, boasts to her ex-husband about her future millions, and the nail in the coffin, a screenshot of an email she'd sent to a bank officer, using her FlowGrid shares as collateral for a personal loan. That was it. Game over. Using my board's authority, I invoked the protective ownership clause Diane had helped me insert years earlier. a clause that allowed for immediate forfeiture of shares in the event of misuse or unauthorized representation. Sophia's attempt to leverage the shares for personal debt violated that instantly. Renee handled the paperwork with surgical precision. Within 2 weeks, the buyback was official. Sophia's 13%? Gone. Her line of credit? Defaulted. Her access to my world? Revoked. When she received the formal notice, she sent me a text message that made me laugh out loud. Sophia, you can't just take my shares? That's stealing. Me, read the contract, Sophia, the part you didn't bother to understand. She never replied after that. The deal of a lifetime, but revenge isn't complete until it's profitable. Around that time, an email landed in my inbox from Apex Data Systems, a multinational firm that had been watching FlowGrid's rise. They were interested in an acquisition, a full buyout. When I'd been approached months earlier, I declined. Back then, I wasn't ready to let go. But now selling wasn't surrender, it was strategy. I reopened the conversation, this time with terms on my timeline. Diane and Renee joined me for every negotiation. Within 8 weeks, Apex made a final offer, $18.4 million. I accepted. When the deal went public, my name exploded across tech media. The once ignored startup founder was now being hailed as one of Seattle's most successful self-made CEOs. I remember sitting in my office when the same cramped space where it all began, staring at the final wire transfer. $9,700,000 in my account. And not a cent of it touched by the people who had mocked me, drained me, and called me a disappointment. The aftermath. My phone wouldn't stop ringing that day. Father, sweetheart, we're so proud of you. You did it. We did it. Mother, we should celebrate together as a family, darling. Sophia, hey sis, I heard the great news. About our shares, how does that work for me now? I let them all leave their voicemails. Then I typed one email that ended everything. To Raymond Ward, Clara Ward, and Sophia Ward. Subject regarding FlowGrid. Dear family, as you've likely read, FlowGrid has officially been acquired by Apex Data Systems. I'm deeply proud of what we achieved. That said, as of 3 months ago, none of you are shareholders or have any financial interest in the company. Your ownership was rescinded in accordance with legal clauses you violated. Documentation was sent to your addresses. I suggest you review it. I appreciate your support over the years and wish you the best in your future endeavors. Alyssa. The silence. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe them an explanation. I ignored their calls, their messages, their pleas. My father eventually showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant turned him away at the door. My mother tried writing me a letter, a rambling apology wrapped in excuses. I didn't read past the first paragraph. Sophia sent a voice note crying about being betrayed. The irony almost made me laugh. Betrayal? No. This was justice with interest. The return to the house. 6 weeks after the acquisition, I drove past the house where it had all started. The cramped home that had felt so enormous when I was a kid. It was strange how small it seemed now, almost fragile under the gray Seattle sky. My mother answered the door in her worn cardigan. For a moment, she just stared at me, her eyes widening like she was seeing a ghost. Alyssa, she breathed, you came. I did, I said quietly. To make peace, not to forgive. My father appeared behind her. His voice was still sharp, but the arrogance was gone. You didn't have to freeze us out like that. We're still your family. I met his gaze and felt nothing. Were you my family when you handed what I built to someone else? He had no reply. I didn't come here to fight, I said softly. I came to say goodbye. I've built something for myself that doesn't depend on your approval anymore. When I turned to leave, my mother called out, Alyssa, wait. I stopped, but didn't turn. You've changed, she said. I smiled faintly. No, Mom. You just never looked closely enough before. And with that, I walked away for good. Reclamation. The next months were a blur of travel, media appearances, and public speaking. I was invited to panels, conferences, podcasts. People wanted to hear how a self-taught woman from a broken family had built an empire, lost everything, and won it back. At the Women in Tech Summit in San Francisco, I stood on stage under the warm glow of studio lights and told my story. Not the sanitized version, but the truth. I learned that family isn't defined by blood, I told the audience. It's defined by respect. If they don't respect you, they don't deserve a seat at your table. The room erupted in applause. I caught sight of Diane in the front row, tears in her eyes. After the speech, a young woman approached me backstage. My family always said my dreams were unrealistic, she said. But hearing you, it makes me believe I can prove them wrong. I smiled. You don't need to prove them wrong, I said. You just need to prove you right. That line would later go viral on social media, quoted millions of times. The unexpected message. Nearly a year after the acquisition, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. The return address was my parents' home. For a long moment, I considered throwing it away unopened. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short note in my father's neat handwriting. Alyssa, we were wrong. About you. About everything.